What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another video. And today we are going to be going over something that I absolutely love, and that is MMORPGs on Linux. Because basically, when I first got into Linux, I made a horrible mistake of looking for like Linux-only games and played some really weird MMOs that worked on Linux, or some very niche MMOs that worked on Linux. And the further I got into Linux, the more I understood like Proton and compatibility layers and using Lutris, things like that. And that really helped me with my journey to realize a lot of the MMORPGs that I played on Windows work just fine on Linux. And today I'm going to go over not necessarily the best in terms of like, I'm going to go over the worst MMO to the best MMO. I'm just going to go over a handful of MMORPGs that I have personally tested on Linux, have all gotten working and working pretty much just as good, if not better than their Windows counterpart, and that I just think will give you some of the best hours of your life playing in MMOs with some of the best worlds, mechanics, things like that. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the first MMO on my list, which is ESO, or Elder Scrolls Online. And if you guys don't know anything about ESO, it is set in the world of Tamriel, Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls, Oblivion, Morrowind, all of them in an MMORPG, so you can play with your friends, play with other people. And I have personally tested this on not only my Linux Mint install, but I've also tested this on the Steam Deck, and it works just fine in both scenarios. I really like ESO on the Steam Deck specifically because it has built-in controller support. It's one of those things where, since it's already on consoles like Xbox and PlayStation, it naturally supports controllers, so it works really well on the Steam Deck, whether you're playing it in handheld mode or you're putting it up on a big screen just to sit back, relax, and play. And I think ESO is a really good casual MMO, and the reason why I say casual is because it has a super simple gear curve that if you got to max level, max level gear, you could really kind of be fine going back in a month or two. Or a week or two, whatever it may be, and you would still be pretty competitive in most aspects. And on top of that, because it's set in the Elder Scrolls universe, you have so much to explore, so much story content, so much lore, so much everything, honestly. And with things like raids, dungeons, open world dungeons and raids, where you're kind of just running around, open up a door, and all of a sudden there's like 3 people running into this cavern and you're joining them and you're destroying things, and it's fun. It's a good time. ESO, one of those super great games, big community, lots of players, and overall runs flawlessly on Linux. I've had really 0 issues, and I highly suggest it for all of the reasons I stated and the fact that it's just a good game. But we're going to jump into the next game on our list, which is Albion Online. And the cool thing about Albion is the fact that it is a native Linux game, so there's no compatibility layers needed. You could even jump right into the Linux Mint store and essentially just download it. And you can do that for almost any Linux distro. It's just downloadable without Steam, nothing like that. You can just straight download it, make an account, and you're good. But it's also available on, I'm pretty sure, iOS, Android, let alone Linux, Windows. I think it even works on Mac if you tried. Like, it is just a very versatile game, so that in and of itself makes it a really big competitor, with just the fact that it has so many players because there's so many people on different platforms. The only real downside is that, from what I understand, they only have one server, so everyone's kind of clustered on a singular server. So for a population standpoint, that's fantastic. Everyone's together, lots of players, you're good to go. But if you're in a part of the world like, let's say, Thailand, you're not going to get great ping, things like that. And it is one of the more, I don't want to say pay to win, because it's not. You can pay to earn gold, which, you know, it is what it is. You know, you can grind out the gold or you can pay for it. That's probably the worst thing about Albion. Other than that, the game itself is beautiful. It has a large player population. You have dungeons. I think you even have PvP. I think you have some larger scale PvP as well. It's a game that I haven't personally delved into too much because it's just not my style of game. I've tried it a few times and I just can't seem to get myself into it. I might try it again here soon, who knows, but I do know there's a lot of players that love it, and I've heard a lot of great things about Albion Online, and overall I know it's a really great choice for most people. But the next one on our list is a fan favorite of mine, or a personal favorite of mine, I should say, New World. New World is actually an Amazon Game Studio MMO, and it's one of those games that I put the most amount of hours in last year. According to Steam, that was my most played game, hands down, was New World. And I absolutely love it. It's a fun game. The issues that I've had with it personally on Windows and a little bit more on Linux than Windows is just the performance is kind of trash. The game runs horribly. Like, I have a pretty decent system and I have to throw this game on low for it to be even somewhat playable in terms of FPS, and that's probably my biggest complaint, is that the FPS also fluctuates quite a bit, and it was kind of hard to get working. But once you get the right Proton version, I think I'm running a Proton GE version and getting it running on Proton, and worked with some boot configurations, etc. within Steam, then you can really get this game running and running decent. Again, it ran like crap on Windows. It runs a little worse on Linux, but it still runs. I am leveling a new character on New World right now, and I'm having a blast, even looking past some of the issues. And the player population has grown and steadily stayed around like 30 to 50,000 players, which is really nice. So you get a lot of people in the world. You see a lot of low-level people leveling, which I love to see in an MMO. I love seeing new players. That means it's growing even more. And I've tried this on the Steam Deck. I've tried this on Linux Mint. And overall, it is a fantastic MMO with a decent player population that has everything an MMO person could love, from larger scale PvP to lower scale PvP where it's 3v3v3, and then you also have some dungeons, raids, things like that, and it has a very steep gear curve, I will give it that, where you have to essentially get max level, and then you have to get your gear to max level, like each individual piece of gear, which I think is 600 or 610 around there, and you have to get every piece of gear to that to really be competitive in the end game. So you have the initial grind, the gear grind, and then you have end game. So there's a lot of content to do, and you could really drop a bunch of hours in New World. And yeah, overall, I love the game. It is almost a better RuneScape in my opinion, in terms of I like the look of it, and with all the gathering and built and things like that. So New World, kind of biased, but I love it, and I did get it working. And the next one on our list is Final Fantasy XIV. And what else can I say? It's Final Fantasy in an MMO in the Final Fantasy world. It's a massive franchise. And one of those things where I don't know how many years ago it was now. It could have been 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't really know. But people got it working on Linux, and it runs fantastic. It is honestly one of the best running like non-Linux MMOs that I've yet to play, or I have played. I've tested it on Linux Mint, and I've tested it on the Steam Deck. And in the same vein that ESO does, Final Fantasy XIV is one of those games where it has native controller support, so running it on the Steam Deck is fantastic. You can basically play it like you were doing it on the PS4 or the Xbox, anything like that. So putting it up on a big screen or just playing it in handheld mode, laying in your bed, doing some easy leveling is fantastic. And that's one of the big benefits to Final Fantasy XIV, let alone it also being like the second largest MMORPG next to one of the other games on this list actually, and you can probably guess which one that is. But like I said, Final Fantasy XIV, it has everything you could ever want: a deep story, a giant world, it has great end game, and it has really good customization in terms of gear and just player customization. It is one of those things that I do suggest you run it off what is called the XIV launcher. It is a Final Fantasy XIV launcher, and it essentially gives you all the compatibility layers that you could need to run the game. That is personally how I ran it. I know you might be able to run it on Steam as well, but the XIV launcher, in my opinion, runs a little bit better, and you can actually link that to your Steam account so it does use your Steam version, which is really nice. And Final Fantasy XIV, like I said, it's one of those games that has also a large player population, has a really good end game with dungeons and raids and PvP, things like that, but it also has a massive world with a massive story, and overall, probably one of the biggest games on this list in terms of how much you could sink your teeth into, and it is slowly but surely taking a bite out of other MMOs because it's on multiple platforms. It works with controllers, so using it on the Steam Deck is wonderful, and just overall Final Fantasy XIV runs flawlessly, highly suggested. And the next one we're moving into is mixed together. I put them together because they're essentially the same game, and I know hardcore players of this will absolutely roast me for saying that, but it's RuneScape and old school RuneScape. Both work just fine on Linux, whether that be through Steam or running it through Lutris, or I don't think it natively supports it as far as I know. If I am wrong, someone tell me in that comment section below. But overall, what can I really say about RuneScape? It is a game that thousands of people have dove into and sunk their teeth into, and I've had friends and colleagues that have been absolutely addicted to this game. I remember I had someone that played this on mobile and just played it at work all day, every day. And it's one of those games that you can do that. You can download it on your phone, download it on your tablet, download it on your Linux install, your Windows install, and you can kind of AFK level professions. Like you could AFK fishing or wood cutting, whatever it may be. And it's, you know, one of those things where you do kind of lose your life a little bit playing RuneScape. There's a lot to do, there's a lot to level, and there's a lot of players. And it's really up to your choice which flavor of RuneScape you want to try out, whether that be old school or newer RuneScape. Personally, it's kind of like me with anime. I have a hard time watching old school anime because of the animation. I have a hard time playing old school RuneScape because the game looks old, and that's my personal problem. I'm aware a lot of people can look past it, and I just simply can't. But old school RuneScape, lots of content, lots of players. Overall, fantastic game you can really delve into, and I suggest it highly because, again, it's super easy to run. It's a low-spec game, so you can run it on an absolute potato, kind of like Albion, run it on a simple potato. So yeah, RuneScape, old school, new school, you choose. Fantastic options. And the next one is a discontinued MMO. You know, gotta love it. Got to love communities that just bring dead games back to life. And that game is Warhammer Online. Specifically, Warhammer Online Return of Reckoning. And Return of Reckoning is a private server for Warhammer Online, which Warhammer Online is an MMO made, I think it was made by EA, and it died more than a few years ago. At this point, I want to say 2016, maybe even later than that, the game got shut down, and this private server got brought back to life, or I guess brought the game back to life, where I think on average there's about 1,000 to 3,000 players online, maybe a little less than 1,000 depending on what hour of the day you're playing, what day of the week you're playing, etc. But it's kind of in the vein of old school RuneScape, where it's not the best looking game, but in terms of gameplay, it's super close to like World of Warcraft, because that is the game that it was trying to compete against, and that's the game that everyone was considering it the WoW killer. It is going to kill World of Warcraft, which nothing's done it yet, but everyone thought Warhammer Online was going to be that game. In this game, you have to run through Lutris. If you go to lutris.com, type in Warhammer Online, you'll get Return of Reckoning. You can download it, install it through Lutris. It'll patch everything, get everything working for you, and it runs just fine. It runs like it was a native Linux game. And honestly, there's a pretty good player population. You can still see some people running around in the early leveling zones. You still see people around the world. There's a lot of quests to do. There's a good amount of endgame content in terms of dungeons, raids. I think there's even open world PvP as well. And overall, it is a fantastic older school game. It's not something that I would consider like a main MMO, like to be the MMO that you put most of your time into. But for casual grinding, you know, getting into a world, a story of Warhammer, and just overall something to really enjoy, then I think Warhammer Online is a fantastic choice. And I think everyone should give it a shot because it is a free game, just like most of the games on here. So yeah, highly suggested Warhammer Online Return of Reckoning, great private server. And next up on our list is Guild Wars 2, and this is my personal favorite MMORPG, and this is the one that I spend most of my time playing, and the one that I've spent most time playing in general. Honestly, it's one of my most played games of all time, and it's the game that like me and my fiance have played together the most, and the one that I have the most fond memories playing. And a lot of the reasons behind it come with, one, the absolute amazing fashion system. There's a reason why they call this game Fashion Wars, is because getting your character the way you want it and the way you want it to look and getting that gear just right is just something I can't explain. It's just really fun. Every now and again I'll just redo the color of my character or something because they have an amazing deep customization system that is kind of not matched by a lot of games. And then on top of that, they have an amazing type of gear progression that I personally like because I am a filthy casual that doesn't like to spend too much time. No matter how much I've said I've dropped a lot of hours in this game, I still don't like to spend like a crap ton of time playing an MMO because it can really take your life away. And Guild Wars 2 is one of those games that the gear curve is kind of nice, that once you get to a certain level of gear, you don't really have to keep grinding it out. You could walk away for 2 months, 3 months, 2 weeks, a year, whatever, and still be competitive in most endgame content without having to drop a bunch of time into it. And on top of that, the base game is free, and all you have to do is buy the expansions, which are honestly on sale all of the time. They just dropped End of Dragons, and I think they bundled Path of Fire and Heart of Thorns together, and they're like $30. And that gives you a world of insane amounts of content, because you also have the living world content, which is essentially story content. You have your own personal story, which kind of details you as a character in the world. And then you have the story content of the actual expansions, like Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, End of Dragons, have their own lore to it. And on top of all of that, you have open world PvP, in the form of world versus world. You have actual dungeons. You have what we call fractals, which is kind of a spin-off of a dungeon. You have really interesting open world events that you can do. You have a bunch of content. Let's just put it that way. There's so much stuff to do in this game, it's crazy. World completion, map completion. You have masteries in the game where you can get mastery points for not only yourself but your mounts, etc. So lo and behold, there's just a bunch of things that you can do in this game. And yeah, it's a really fun game to level with other people and play with other people. And like I said, it's the one that I've personally put the most time into. And it's another game that I've tested not only on Linux Mint, but I've tested on the Steam Deck. And the Steam Deck is a little weird because this game doesn't natively support controllers, but it has a really cool, like almost FPS camera in a way where it gives you a little crosshair, and it really makes using joysticks a lot better. And there's a lot of profiles made by the community to really get it running, which I uploaded one of their profiles and then I personally edited it a little bit better to fit my play style, and I have it down to a point to where I think it's very playable on the Steam Deck, if only for casual leveling and doing map completion. But yeah, that's Guild Wars 2. I'm a little biased on it because I personally love the game a lot, but it's a game that I know a lot of people can sink their teeth into, and it's a game that I know everybody can enjoy, and it honestly runs fantastic on Linux, running through Proton on Steam, using the actual Guild Wars 2 launcher, because that's where I've personally played it a lot. But it's gotten a lot more playable now that it's on Steam, but you can also install it through Lutris, etc. But yeah, Guild Wars 2, 10 out of 10 MMO, highly suggested. But Now we are moving into what I would say is the cream of the crop, the prim de la prim, the #1 MMO of all time, the one I'm sure you've all been waiting for, and that is World of Frickin' Warcraft. What can I say about WoW? Kind of like Final Fantasy and ESO. It's a massive game. It's a big MMORPG, and it's kind of awesome that it works on Linux. Went out some finagling, I will say. I personally play World of Warcraft private servers because I don't like paying for subscriptions, which, by the way, Final Fantasy XIV also has a subscription fee. I don't know if you guys knew that. I'm assuming most of you did, but just to let you know now. I personally don't like playing sub fees. I would rather pay for the game up front and then just play the game and then maybe buy expansions here and there. So I play on private servers. Personally, right now I'm playing on Turtle WoW, which is a vanilla plus server. And Turtle WoW has a giant player population and really easy to set up. You just go to their actual website, download the installer, go into Lutris, install the .exe. It loads everything and gets it working like that, and then go back into Lutris and set up the actual exe. If you want a full video on how to set up a WoW private server on Lutris, let me know in the description below and I will explain that to you. But I've also tested Retail WoW and WoW Classic on the Steam Deck and Linux, all through Lutris, essentially just downloading it off Lutris' website, logging in to the Battle.net, and then downloading it. Or you can also set Battle.net up through Steam. There's a bunch of videos on how to do that. If I can find one, I'll link it in the description below as well. But yeah, World of Warcraft, it's a giant franchise that also has big worlds, lots of players, end game, giant gear curve, new expansions every year to 2 years. Like, it's just one of those games that everyone knows about, whether you're a absolute no life or just a filthy casual or literally someone that doesn't play video games. You know World of Warcraft. And on Linux, I will say it runs just fine. I've had no issues playing Turtle WoW on my Linux install. It runs like butter, like 144 FPS, everything maxed out. It is technically running off classic WoW, or WoW 1.12.1, so it is a super old game. So if it doesn't run well, you have a problem, because it runs just fine on the Steam Deck too. It runs on a potato. And if you don't want to sink money into it, private servers are a thing. I have tested a few other private servers for World of Warcraft. They're really easy to set up. It pretty much is the same setup on every private server that you do on Turtle WoW, except for WoW Ascension, I think it is. And that is the only WoW server I just can't seem to get freaking working for whatever reason. But yeah, World of Warcraft, giant game, a bunch of players, beautiful story, beautiful world, and if you don't want to support Battle.net / Activision / I guess Microsoft now, private servers definitely exist with abundance, might I add. But yeah, that's it. That goes the video, guys. That is everything I wanted to say today. The best MMOs that I feel you can play on Linux right now. I don't think you're going to get much better than the ones I listed out. And I really do think they are all worth playing, and they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. And personally, with Steam and Proton, all of these games run so well. It's almost like running them on Windows. Like I said, the only game that kind of runs like dog water is New World, but I digress. It runs, it plays, you can level. I like it. But yeah, guys, if you guys enjoyed this video, then please give that thumbs up button a nice smash. And if you do enjoy the channel, please hit that subscribe button. I'm going to try to do more videos like this where I go over games that just work on Linux and games that I've personally tried on Linux, because I feel like it'll help people a lot to kind of dig out what games they can run or have ran. And on top of that, I'm going to be doing some Steam Deck content. I have some things on the way to get some Steam Deck videos out there, so I will test out games. So if you want to see videos or of specific games running on the Steam Deck, please let me know. But yeah, guys, if you enjoyed the video, like I said, like button, subscribe, comment down below, do any of the things that you love to do on YouTube. But yeah, my name is The Poor Gamer, and peace out, everybody.